Hello and welcome to the Gothic Unicorn. Today I'm doing some more spooky stuff. Now obviously I've left it a bit late to do much this spooky season, so I'm trying to focus on a few bits that will pad out my existing collection of Halloween decorations for the doll's house. And I've got to admit that this year I'm definitely on a spooky plant kick. If you watched my last video, you'll know this. I would one day like to have an actual garden for my doll's house. I have a plan to have a stand made for it at some point, and I would like there to be a crypt underneath the house, but also at the bottom I would like there to be a drawer that could contain a spooky garden. Not 100% sure how spooky that garden would be, but I want a spooky garden. Anyway, that said, we're going to work on another spooky plant today, and I think this is quite a good one. Now, in the past, I have made some real life Halloween decorations, and one of the things I made was roses with eyes. That is basically where you get some artificial flowers and you stick fake eyes into them. It's very simple, but it's kind of one of those almost stereotypical Halloween things, you know, the flowers are watching you. But what I've seen in my research is I've seen some really cool plants that have got lots of little eyeballs, but I've also seen some really cool plants that have got a single big eyeball, and today I'm going to make a plant with a single big eyeball. Now the main ingredient, the most important ingredient, is going to be a polystyrene ball. Now the size is up to you. This is a fairly good size, probably almost an inch in diameter, and I think that's going to work really well for what I want to do. You could go with whatever size you want. You could make it a bit smaller and do a bunch of them, or you could go a bit bigger. This just happened to be what I'd got and what seemed like the most appropriate. So that is going to become my eyeball in due course. I've also got the same issue that I had in the last video regarding my pots. I haven't got the air dry clay, and as a result I'm looking at different options, and today I'm going to be using a lid. Now this is a lid off a vitamin container, I think. It's a nice sort of ovalish shape, and I'm hoping that with some cardboard and some hot glue I can put enough substance into this to give it a bit of weight to weight down my actual plant. So I think I'm going to start with the pot, and that means I need to go and find some cardboard, so I'll be right back. Now I've pulled out some cardboard. This is cardboard. It is some, albeit thin, corrugated cardboard from packaging. And what I've done is I've used my 1-inch circle punch to cut out some circles. Now I went with 8 because that fills the gap in there. Now it doesn't fill it exactly, but it was the closest match I'd got, and if I put some hot glue around it, it will make it more secure. So all I'm going to do, now that I've glued all 8 of these together into a nice big pile, is I am going to put some glue on the bottom, and I'm going to stick that into there, because I want this to dry properly before I get to the point of adding my stem. because I'm going to put I'm going to make a hole into there eventually, and I'm going to stick my stem into the cardstock. That's not cardstock, cardboard. So while all this dries, I'm going to turn my attention to the outside of the pot, and I think that I'm just going to give this a coat of paint. Now I may trim off these two little sticky out bits with my craft knife, but I think I'm just going to give it some paint. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably go with a black undercoat, but I think that rather than going with a metallic look as I did with my previous planter, I'm going to go with something a bit more natural, maybe a sort of clayey colour. I think I've got a suitable coloured paint that will sort of replicate a terracotta pot. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. Obviously what you could do if you wanted to is you could put some string or some paper punch pieces on the outside to give it texture, so it looks like one of those that come with moulded details. That's up to you. I'm probably just going to go with plain, but you know, anything is possible. Although actually I may find a little punch and put something on these end pieces where you've got the grips where you'd normally turn the lid. And then with the underneath, I will just paint it. I know that it's got a lot of writing on there, but nobody's going to see it when it's in position, because it's going to be most firmly on the ground, and as long as it's painted, it's not going to be a problem. I had to do it, didn't I? I went looking to see if I could find a punch that would fit, and I found a flamingo. I have no idea why I have a tiny little flamingo punch, but since my Halloween decorations include flamingos turned into vultures, I decided to put these on the side. And all that I did is I piled up two to give a little bit more relief, and I think they work quite well. So now back to the painting. This is the lid after 2 coats of black paint. Because it's plastic, it's never going to come up great first coat, not just using ordinary craft paint, but if you persevere you'll get reasonable coverage. Obviously if I wanted this to be black I would put further coats on, but I don't. I'm going to paint it with my clay coloured paint, which is actually a sort of terracotta colour, which I think will be a great colour for a plant pot. So I've left it at that. It's just to give it a darker undercoat. So yeah, just, you know, don't stress if you try and paint something plastic and it doesn't work first coat, unless you use a proper primer, which you can get, but who's got time and the money for that when you're just making something out of nothing. My container is all painted, and as you can see it's got this sort of terracotta natural looking pot kind of colour. Well, that sort of almost unnatural terracotta colour that these sort of pots are when they are new. I've given it a quick coat of matte Mod Podge because I'm going to age it up so it looks more in keeping with my doll's house, and this just protects the paint underneath and means that I don't wash it all off. So the Mod Podge is not quite dry yet, so I'm going to put this aside and let it finish off drying, and I'm going to start work on the actual plant. Obviously, since I'm making a eyeball plant, I need a good eyeball for it. And what I've done is I've started off by putting some tissue over, a bit over half of my little ball, which is a polystyrene or sometimes called styrofoam. Now I've done this because this actual material is a bit odd. It's a really odd sort of texture, and I just find that if you put something over it, it just gives you a better base. Plus, it doesn't paint very well. I've got to admit, this stuff does not paint very well. So putting this on, if I want to add any paint, it's going to be far better, I hope. So obviously I need my pupil and iris, and you could print one off if you've got a printer. Now this is just an eye I found on the internet, and I printed it out far too small, but I'm not about to waste more paper and more ink to do it again, so I've made my own. Now you could use your own eye. You could take a picture of your own eye and put your own eye onto it, so you're watching everybody even when you're not there. It's up to you, but I've just gone for a really simple version here, which is I took my 1-inch circle punch and a smaller circle punch, and I punched out 2 circles, and I've then coloured them in with alcohol markers. Now I've gone for this sort of orangey yellow kind of a colour for the iris because it doesn't look natural, and that's the kind of look I'm going for. And then obviously I've got the black for the pupil, just because I want that really good contrast, and I've put a little slit in it so that when I glue it on I can hopefully get a better adherence to it, because it's copier paper, it's not anything special. It's not going to mould over the ball like the tissue has. I mean, the tissue I've got lots of folds in, I don't care. Some of that is just going to add sort of texture. I can add some veining and things like that to it. Now I haven't covered all of it because this is a plant. I'm going to need some green, and I'm going to put something on the back once I've attached the stem, once I've figured out how I'm doing the stem, and then it'll look a bit more plant-like, I hope. It'll look a bit more like the sort of inspiration image that I've come up with. So my next step is to go and find some glue and stick this onto here. I'm just going to use my normal glue. I'm not going to use the Mod Podge, although I could, because I don't want the sort of shiny finish on it at the moment. I'm going to possibly put some finish onto this, but I'm not sure what I'm going to use or how I'm going to use it. So at the moment I want to keep it as matte and neutral as possible. I added a little bit of detail around the edge of my iris once I'd glued it in place, just using a fine alcohol marker. And I know it's not realistic. I don't really want it to be that realistic, because I want that kind of semi-cartoonish feel to this particular plant. Now I'm going to make the stem for this plant out of a piece of a plastic straw. Now this is one of those quite big plastic straws, and what I've done is I've actually prepared my container, and I've cut the bottom of this, and this will, if I fold it in right, fit into here. It will. I've done it once, but of course I've got to get them in the right order, and then that will be glued into there a bit better than it is at the moment, and then the eyeball will fit on here. Now I know it's rather upright, but my man-eating plant, its heads are very curvy, and I wanted this to be different, which is why I've gone for this. Now I'm not going to leave the stem like this. I've got moss, I've got chenille sticks, pipe cleaners if you're over a certain age, and I'm going to use various bits to actually give this a bit more depth, but that's just so you get where I'm going with this. Now what I've done at the end where it's going to be attached to my ball is I've cut a chunk out. So I've got a piece that is still there and flat, and I've got a piece that sort of will fit against the eyeball. And the idea is that I'm going to glue those together. And that is all I'm going to do. I'm just going to get some of my usual glue, and I'm going to smear it all over. As you can see, I'm not worrying about there being too much. And I'm just going to try gluing that in place. Now it's going to take a while because obviously I need it to set and actually hold, but I don't see any reason why that won't work, and then that will give me the basis of my plant. Obviously when I start adding the bits to the back, that is then going to cover this, and it will reinforce the join. I'm having problems with my words today. I've already been disturbed once while I've been filming this, and I've had to go back and refilm a bit because it sounded like somebody was trying to break in through my front door. It was just the postman. It was just the post with a box of skeletons. You know, just the usual sort of deliveries that we get around here. Anyway, I'm going to let this cure, and I'll come back and we will get on with making it look more plant-like. I had a little bit of an issue with getting the two parts to stick together, with getting the straw to stick to the styrene ball. So I used a little bit of hot glue just to hold it in place while my other glue set, because I got bored sitting there waiting for the glue to set enough. I'm not going to lie, it happens. While I got the glue gun out, I decided I would attach the stem into the container and fill the container up with glue. Now I'm going to cover this with moss rather than soil. So once it's all fully set, I will cover it with my usual glue and stick moss to it, and then the pot will have bits of moss coming over it and that kind of thing, just to sort of change up the pots, because I don't want them all looking the same. That would be incredibly boring. So that's where I'm at. I also figured that actually it would make sense to have the plant stuck in the pot before I start working on the stem. Then I won't do too much that would get in the way. So that's where we're at. We've now got an eyeball in a pot. It's not the strangest thing that's ever crossed my work table, but it's up there. I've got to admit it. My next step is probably going to be to figure out how I'm going to do the stem. Now I'm leaning towards the idea of actually wrapping some of this around and maybe having some tendrils coming out, because, well, I like the idea of plants having vines that they could maybe catch somebody in with. My man-eating plants have a couple of vines, and I think my eyeball might as well. And it will then allow me to cover the stem quite easily with the chenille sticks. So I think I'm going to go and I'm going to have a play with that. And I do mean I will have a play. I will try wrapping it around and see how it looks and decide if that's what I want to do. That's a lot of how I actually create things, is by trial and error. If it doesn't work, we go back to the drawing board and we come up with another idea. And I do like to reflect that in my videos, because not everything is perfect first time. And some of the videos I will have made several trial versions before I do things. This one I haven't, I'm winging it. So I have no idea exactly how this is going to work out, but it's fun. I got somewhat carried away when I was playing with the pipe cleaners, the chenille sticks, and I have sorted my stem. Now it took 3 of the sticks to do the stem because I wrapped so much round and then I left a bit to make my vines, and then I've used another one which I wrapped round in a circle flat, and then I've shaped it around the back of the ball to give me my green bits, which means I've now got the basis of my greenery. What I've also got is I've got some aquarium plants. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the leaves off of this and then I'm going to stick them onto this to give it more texture. Stick some onto the vines and give it, as I say, give it more depth, give it more texture, make this look a bit more plant-like maybe. Although, who am I trying to kid? As I've said, you know, this has got a kind of cartoony element to it and I'm fine with that. To work with these, because all they are is plastic, all you'd need is a pair of scissors and you just cut them off where you want them to go. I've got some glue off over to the side here and I'm just going to dip the end in some glue and then I'm just going to sort of stick it in like that. I'm not sure whether I'm going to stick them all out, whether I will lay some of them down, not sure. I'm going to have a play and I'm going to see what develops. And that, yeah, I quite like it sticking up. So I'm going to go and stick some leaves on. What I'm also going to do, now that all the glue in my pot is dry, is I'm going to cover the bottom of this with glue and I'm going to cover that with some moss, and I may mix some moss in on there just to change things up. I'm not sure. Depends if I can find some moss in a different colour to the one I use at the bottom. I have got different colours of moss, but whether I can find them is another matter. As I've said, I'm still having teething problems in the new craft space. I'll probably have that for the entire time that I'm here. No matter how long that is, I will never be able to find everything at the same time. I think I've reached a point at which I'm happy to leave this plant. I've added leaves to the vines and I've had a lot of leaves to the green back of the eyeball. I'm not able to remember what the actual part of the plant is, and of course it isn't really. It's sort of almost like the back of the head of the plant, and I've given that a lot of texture by sticking leaves at different angles and sort of trying to make it look more crazy. Obviously, if I wanted to make this look more realistic, as if an eyeball plant could be realistic, I could do that by adding some paint and sort of shading and toning it and all sorts. I will probably add some paint for some aging before I display this piece. But at the moment I'm quite liking the sort of new pot look. It sort of is doing it for me, it's sort of working. But I'm aware that most of my other pieces sort of look a bit worn, so I may dull it down a bit. The moss works great, it just fills in that gap, and of course it does actually give a bit of a change from all my other plants which have got a soil effect to them. So yeah, generally I'm quite pleased with my eye. It's come out a bit different, and I think it's going to add another dimension to my sort of spooky garden decor. I hope you've enjoyed seeing me make another spooky plant for my Halloween decor. If you have enjoyed the video, please like, comment and subscribe. Maybe even ring that notification bell, just so you know when I do put up a video. I try to put up a video every week. I don't promise anything because life gets in the way, but usually I get there. Normally on a Friday, but again, I don't rule anything out. But until next time, bye.